What's up, it's Cinema Shogun here, and we are going to take a brief break from talking about all of the crazy stuff going on in this country, from talking about the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. We're going to take a brief break from all of that to circle back around to the story that started it all for me. If it wasn't for this story, you may not even be seeing me on your TV screens, on your phones, on your tablets, on your computer screens right now as we speak. And the story I am talking about is the Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie story. A really interesting true crime case that caught the world by storm. And I mean, we were all so invested in the story, and it had a lot of loops, it had a lot of twists, it had a lot of turns. And still to this day, I think a lot of us have this sense of this story not being fully completed, if you will. I don't know about you all, but I still have this emptiness within me because I still feel like there's some questions that I wish would have gotten answered. But a lot of those questions went right out the window. The possibility of those questions being answered went right out the window when we found out what happened to Brian Laundrie, or what Brian Laundrie did to himself. Now, one of my main criticisms throughout this story, and a criticism that a lot of people had, was that Brian Laundrie's parents were quiet. They did not say a single word. And when I say they didn't say a single word, I mean nothing. They did not talk to the media at all. The most that was said was Brian Laundrie's dad told someone to get out of his way one time while they were asking him questions and he was trying to mow his front lawn. So we've kind of just been sitting here for over a year and some months. I can't even remember how long it's been. It's been so long. And we've all been waiting on the day, patiently, waiting on the day that these people, the Laundries, will finally open their mouths. Because, I understand that the situation with their son and with Gabby Petito was a difficult situation. But for them to just be so cold-hearted that they don't even return calls to Gabby Petito's parents, so cold-hearted that they could just remain silent through this all. And, because of that, I think the Laundries became, what can we call them? What can we really call them? Infamous? They became public enemy number one, villains. To this day, when I think of bad people, I think of the Laundries. I don't know why, but that Roberta's face pops out at me. I don't know why, but it will forever be etched into my brain and into my soul from covering this case so closely. But we've all been patiently waiting on the day that they were going to talk. And it looked like it was never going to happen until the Petitos filed a lawsuit against the Laundries. Now, I've been following that situation. There's sometimes a few little updates here and there that I don't necessarily cover, but I'm waiting for this case to really kick off. But the point that I've been making ever since we found out about this lawsuit was that the Laundries, hopefully, will finally be forced to speak. That the Petitos are going to force these people to speak. As you know, for me, I can't speak for the Petitos. For me, I don't think this case is about money. I don't think this lawsuit is about money at all. I think this lawsuit is about holding the Laundries accountable, making sure that they cannot simply ignore this situation for the rest of their lives. And to be honest, on an even deeper level, I feel like it may be helpful for the Laundries if they speak about this, if they open up about this. Bottling this stuff up inside must be painful. It must be extremely difficult, especially when you know the whole world is waiting for you to just say something, anything at all. Anything. So honestly, I think it would be liberating. They might not realize it, but I think it would be liberating for them. I think that it would be a positive thing for them. I think it would be helpful for their mental health. And I know none of you all care about Roberta Laundrie's mental health. Neither do I. But honestly, I think it would be helpful for them if they actually talked about this to someone, anyone. Keeping that stuff bottled up inside, it can't be good. It simply cannot. And personally, I really feel some kind of way about the Laundries. Like, from the outside in, you might not understand, but as someone, if you were someone who watched this whole situation play out, then chances are you despise these people. But one thing I constantly have to remind myself while covering the story is that they lost a child too. The Laundries lost a child as well. And sure, they could have and they should have handled this situation differently. But at the end of the day, I don't think this was an ideal situation for them either. And I'm sure they are struggling. Maybe struggling in a different way than the Petitos. But I'm sure they are struggling as well. Also, you got to think about it. Not only did they lose a child, but they lost a child to a dramatic situation to where their child took another child's life. And I think that even makes the situation possibly worse. But to my surprise, and I mean, I did not expect this at all yesterday, but I know I've learned one thing from this Gabby Petito case. Just when you think it's over, it's not over. It's not over. And just when you think you've heard it all, you haven't. There's more. And, I never would have expected that we would be here right now still talking about this case. It blows my mind that we are still getting juicy. It's not like we're getting, here's a little piece of information no one cares about. No, we are getting bombshells, juicy information still to this day from the Gabby Petito case. By the way, I'm actually on like a Gabby Petito documentary on Discovery Plus. I haven't even watched it yet, but it's been up there for a couple of months. If any of you all have seen it, let me know down in the comments below. Also, I should be on a new Bob Saget documentary soon as well. But anyways, Roberta Laundrie, to my surprise yesterday, she has broken her silence. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It only took, Lord knows how long. I've honestly lost count. But she has officially broken her silence. Now, this caught me by surprise, but I will say this. In some ways, I was kind of halfway prepared. Of course, now my neighbor wants to cut his grass. So anyways, before I was rudely interrupted, I had a feeling that we may be getting to this point because recently, I'm not sure how many of you all watched the video, but recently, the Laundries threw their lawyer under the bus, Stevie Two-Tex Bertoloni. They threw him under the bus, basically saying, hey, we've been quiet the whole time. Everything you heard, it's on Steven Bertolino. He's the one that advised us this way. He's the one who has made the public statements. So they basically said, hey, all the stuff that you've been mad at us about, you can blame Bertoloni. It's his fault. He's the one that told us to be silent. He's the one that put out these questionable statements into the public. We had nothing to do with that. So I figured we may get to this point where the Laundries start speaking for themselves because, after all, they threw their lifetime-long lawyer and friend under the bus just a couple of months ago. But Roberta has responded. And she's talking about this burn after you read letter that she wrote to Brian Laundrie. Full disclosure, I have not read this at all yet. I saw it come out. I got really excited and I said, you know what? I'm going to wait until I can record a video so you can get my honest first reactions. Now, if need be, maybe I'll do another video after I get to think about this stuff and break it all down. But you're going to see my honest reaction to what she has to say. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. I, Roberta Laundrie, am a defendant in the above styled cause, and I do hereby swear or affirm that I fully understand the meaning of all the terms of this affidavit. I wrote the letter requested by plaintiff's request for production. I wrote the letter to my son, Brian Laundrie, on or about the end of May 2021. Although I do not know the exact date I wrote the letter, I do know that I wrote it and gave it to Brian before Brian and Gabby left Florida for New York, which was on June 2nd, 2021. Brian and Gabby went from Florida to New York before they went out west. The purpose of the letter was to reach out to Brian while he and I were experiencing a difficult period in our relationship. Brian and I always had a very open and communicative relationship, and in the months prior to the trip, our relationship had become strained. Brian and I shared a love of stories, and some of the language in the letter was using similar phrases to describe the depth of a mother's love. The two books that come to mind are The Runaway Bunny and Little Bear. I wasn't expecting those names. In addition, Gabby had given Brian a book called Burn After Writing, which contains printed questions to which the reader responds by writing their answers on the page. The back of the book instructs the reader to create a secret book and then destroy by burn after writing. The bottom of the back cover says, write, burn, repeat. Brian, Gabby, and I often joked about this book and the importance of being able to express yourself. If you were embarrassed or simply did not want anyone to know your thoughts or feelings, then the book offered the perfect solution by telling you to burn it. This is where my message to Brian came from, and I wrote on the cover of the letter for Brian to burn after reading. In short, I was trying to connect with Brian and repair our relationship as he was planning to leave home, and I hoped this letter would remind him how much I loved him. There were some other phrases that I used in the letter, which are not found in the books I shared with Brian as a child. However, these phrases were common enough in our circle of friends and family to describe who you could turn to in the most troubling times of your life. While I used words that seem to have connection with Brian's actions and his taking of Gabby's life, I never would have fathomed the events that unfolded months later between Brian and Gabby would reflect the words in my letter. The words in the letter could never have been a comment on that tragic situation, as they were written so many months before. My words to Brian were meant to convey my love and support for my son through a light-hearted and quirky reminder that my love for him was not diminished and could not be shaken by the miles of separation we would soon be faced with. Although a few of the words in the letter are being quoted by others as having a connection to this case, all of the words taken together and in the context of the reason the letter was written show that there is no connection. In addition, there has been some speculation that this letter was in Brian's possession or in his backpack when he died, insinuating that I gave it to him as he left my home on September 13th, 2021. But that is not true, because the FBI had the letter in their possession and questioned members of my family about it prior to October 20th, 2021, when my husband and I found Brian's remains in the reserve. I repeat that the letter I wrote to Brian before he left with Gabby for their fateful trip was nothing more than a private communication between myself and my son, and I never expected anyone else would read it. In some way, I did not want anyone else to read it, as I know it is not the type of letter a mother writes to her adult son, and I did not want to embarrass Brian. That is why I wrote "burn after reading" on the envelope, and I know that Brian would know what that meant. I am now appreciative that he actually kept it. Roberta, Laundrie. Whew. Okay. Well, for one, I can say that it feels really kind of weird and awkward reading that, simply because we waited for so long to hear from these people. But what I will say is this: in an odd way, this is almost refreshing or like relieving for me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here to defend Roberta. I think you all already know how I feel about these people. But this feels refreshing as opposed to what we have gotten so far. Why couldn't they have been just a little more transparent through all of this? Now, some will say that Roberta is lying here. And maybe she is. Maybe she is. But if she is, wouldn't the FBI know that? I don't think it would be a good idea for her to lie to the courts about when this letter was written, because from what she says, the FBI already had this in their possession, and that they should know the date that this was written. So if we were to believe her that this letter was given to Brian earlier on, then okay, whatever. But like I said, it feels a tad bit refreshing to finally have some transparency here. It's not going to be respected by most people, because when it came to them being transparent and open about what was going on in this situation while the situation was playing out, they were silent and they said nothing. But now that Brian is gone and Gabby is gone and the heat is basically just on them, it's like now they're speaking up to cover their tracks or to cover their own behinds. You know what I mean? But I do understand that in cases like this, lawyers often instruct their clients to not say anything. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal expert, but I am telling you right now, that is sometimes the worst advice you can give anyone. And it's a slippery slope, because a lawyer telling their client to be quiet and not say anything, that can be some of the best advice you ever get, and it can be some of the worst advice you can ever get. I have watched people's lives. I have literally watched innocent people's lives be destroyed because they were advised by their lawyer to remain silent while all types of people were throwing out all types of accusations about them, speculating about them online, spreading rumors, what have you. If I were you, and I'm ever stuck in one of these positions, I would really think about it. Because oftentimes it's better to talk. If the Laundries wanted people to not look at them the way they look at them, then they should have talked a long time ago. I'm not saying they had to come out here and spill everything, but to be a little more transparent, I think it would have gotten them a long way. At this point, everyone already knows how they feel about the Laundries, and I don't think they're going to be able to change that. We all have formed our opinions about the Laundries already, right? For the most part. I mean, those of us who actually followed this case, we already know how we feel about these people. And we've known for over a year. So it's going to take a hell of a lot for them to change our minds. In fact, they're never going to change our minds. But if they were just a little more transparent to begin with, then I don't think they would have been painted as the villains that they have now been painted as. You know what I mean? So in situations, I understand telling your clients, if you're a lawyer, telling your clients, hey, it's best not to talk. Remain silent. You don't want to say the wrong thing. But at the same time, when the court of public opinion has already found you guilty and they're labeling you as a monster, I think it's good to speak out. Because what we have here is, we have the legal court system, okay? That's something that we have here in place. But now, in today's day and age, with social media, we also have the court of public opinion. And it may sound weird to you. It may sound weird to you right now, but I can guarantee you all that oftentimes the courts of public opinion is more important than the legal courts, okay? It honestly is. What do you think affects people's jobs more? What do you think affects people's livelihoods and their future more? What happens to them in court or what happens to them in the court of public opinion? In today's day and age, with social media, with us being connected on the internet, the court of public opinion is very important. And when the court of public opinion has found you guilty, regardless if you're really guilty or not, when they have found you guilty and you sit there and you say nothing for months on end, you are only confirming in their minds that you are guilty, and you're only adding fuel to the fire because people will come up with more speculation, more rumors, and more nonsense unless you battle that. So the Laundries could have gotten out of this situation a little bit better than what they did, but they were listening to their lawyer who told them to be silent. Now, she talks about how Brian and her had this rift, how they were moving farther apart from each other. And I can almost guarantee you all that Roberta probably blamed that on Gabby Petito. It seems to me like Roberta was really close with her son. She even talked about that letter that she wrote to Brian and how the letter would probably embarrass Brian because usually a mother doesn't write letters to her adult son in the way she wrote that letter. So I would think she babied Brian, which is okay, nothing wrong with that. Brian was probably a mama's boy. She was the leading lady in Brian's life for all of his life. Then he got a little bit older. He found Gabby. He was ready to go out of the house, go ready to spread his wings and explore. And I don't think Roberta was happy about that. She was probably a little bit bitter about that, which probably made it easier for her to remain silent when she found out that Gabby Petito was missing. Because in my opinion, I don't necessarily think that she liked Gabby Petito. And I don't think that that has necessarily anything to do with Gabby Petito as a person. I think she just didn't like the idea of her son having another woman. You know what I mean? So I think that's what happened here. I think the rift and the divide that they were going through had to do with Gabby almost 100%. And I find it funny that in the letter she talked about how her and her son would talk about the importance of being able to communicate, the importance of being able to express yourself. Yet we sat here for a year and months. Is it 2 years now? I don't know. We've been sitting here for almost 2 years at this point, waiting on you to finally express yourself. So for you to, in this documents addressing the court, for you to acknowledge the importance of expressing yourself and communicating, I find that very ironic because you haven't expressed yourself at all until just now. So for someone who knows the importance of communicating and expressing yourself, I would like to know why you refrained from doing so until now, until people started flipping out, because we know there's this letter to Brian that says burn after reading, and in that letter you say something about providing Brian with a shovel to bury Gabby Petito. So now that the heat is on you, Brian's gone, Gabby's gone, it looks like y'all are going to be getting sued, maybe losing some money. Now all of a sudden, you can express yourself. You should have expressed yourself months ago. The moment Gabby was reported missing, you should have called Gabby's parents and expressed yourself then. You understand the importance of expressing yourself and communicating, yet you didn't express yourself not once throughout this entire situation, and you did not communicate with anyone not once throughout the entirety of this situation, and that dug you a deeper grave, and that's why America will always look at the Laundries, and they will call them the dirty Laundries, and we will always think of them as villains, as bad people, because they did it to themselves. I do not blame the Laundries for what Brian did. I blame the Laundries for remaining silent about it, for not being at least respectful enough to pretend to care when the Petitos called. No, they ignored the phone calls. And I am not going to forget about all of that just because she finally spoke up and expressed herself just now. But I'll look into this a little bit more. Maybe I'll think of some other points that I want to make. But for now, it's your turn. Let me know what you think. Let me know your points. Was there a point that I didn't make that you want to express? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.